If you watch the animated series My Little Pony Friendship is Magic and have any kind of education beyond the elementary level, you can hardly have failed to notice the influence of classical myth on the world and stories of the show. The conventions of classical myth, that is, traditional stories from ancient Greece, Rome, and by extension the Near East, flow throughout the series. These conventions contribute generously to the richness and detail of the show, as well as its core elements. Welcome to class, bronies and fanfillies. I'm Grim Giggles, and if it isn't obvious, this video is an academic analysis of classical myth in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. A lot of terms will be tossed around, so some of them need to be defined right away. Classical myth has already been defined as traditional stories from ancient Greece, Rome, and the Near East. Classical mythology is the study and interpretation of those stories. To put it more simply, myth refers to the stories, mythology is what people do with them. My Little Pony refers hereafter specifically to the fourth generation of the well-known children's entertainment franchise. This analysis covers the first 3 seasons. First, a look at the role of classical myth in the world-building of the show, then an exposition of the major mythological themes and motifs that influence the writing, and finally a quick survey of details that you might have missed. The world, that is, the setting, of My Little Pony is the land of Equestria. It's clear from the show, and the official map, that there are many other kingdoms in this world, but the events of My Little Pony are mostly in Equestria. The development of this time and place through the episodes is called world building, and in this show that process relies heavily on classical myth. The most obvious mythical aspects of Equestria are the creatures inhabiting the world, the nation's origin myth, Pegasus Society, and the Alicorn Princesses. It makes sense that a lot of the creatures in My Little Pony are from classical myth, because the 3 main types of pony are too. Granted, the ancient Greeks didn't invent the horse, but horses were extremely important to the ancient Greek religion, and many of the gods' offspring were equine rather than human, including the original Pegasus. Unicorns were also originally a product of the classical imagination. The Greek word for them was monokeratos, and actually they were believed to be real animals that lived in India. The ancient Greeks weren't terribly accurate in their descriptions of foreign lands, and their one-horns were probably mistaken rhinoceri or something. In addition to the 3 main pony races, Equestria is apparently home to a few griffins, phoenixes, at least 1 minotaur, a hydra, the 3-headed hellhound Cerberus, a manticore, a sea serpent, and even ursas. You might know that the ursas are based on constellations, and you might even know that those constellations go back to ancient Greece, but you probably don't know the story of Callisto. Callisto was a huntress, a devotee of the virgin goddess Artemis, and therefore celibate. Zeus had different ideas, though, and when she bore his son, he had to turn her into a bear and give the boy to someone else to raise to protect them both from Artemis, who didn't take kindly to broken vows of chastity. The boy's name was Arcas, and one day when he was hunting, he came across his transformed mother. Before he could kill her, Zeus turned him into a bear and put them both into the sky as Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. Thus, the Ursas Major and Minor in Ghostbusters are mother and cub. Dragons were purposefully excluded from this list. While the word dragon comes from the Greek drakon, classical dragons were just really big magical snakes, like this guy.
It's so true!
Dragons as we think of them today and see them on My Little Pony are a medieval invention. As far as I know, the Draconequus was invented by Hasbro. Fans know next to nothing about equestrian history, and that has been incredibly frustrating for many of us. All the show has really featured is the founding legend of Ponyville and the founding legend of Equestria, also known as an origin myth. I'm talking about Hearthswarming Eve. According to this legend, the 3 pony tribes were once divided, but when their survival was threatened by the hate-loving Wendigo, they had to search for a new homeland. The threat, born and fed by their strife, followed them until they overcame it by uniting in friendship. That bit isn't all that important right now. What's important is that this quest for home is an archetype of myth. The Odyssey, the Aeneid, every great flood story under the sun They're all quest for home legends. In comparison to some of the aforementioned epics, though, the pageant performed by the cast of Friendship is Magic seems lacking. The point of the pageant is to emphasize the power of friendship, not to tell an epic saga of racial conflict, aimless wandering, heroic feats, and divine interference. Nevertheless, the story has the makings of the latter, and that unfulfilled potential is a little frustrating, although it can also be taken as inspiring.